Welcome to the Real Life, Real Kitchen podcast. Real talk for curious mums reclaiming food, family, and community. I'm Zoe F. Willis, English mother of many, mentor to mums. And if you're reheating your tea again, this is your place. So pop the kettle on as each week I chat with folks who feed, heal, and hold our communities together. You don't need perfection to pull up a chair, just curiosity and the courage to ask, what if there's another way?
Hello, and welcome to the Real Life, Real Kitchen podcast. And I'm chuffed to bits because I've got Bonnie Landry of the Make Joy Normal podcast who has joined us for this evening. Now, Bonnie is based all the way over on Vancouver Island, isn't it, over in Canada?
Yes.
And through the
As
wonders
west as you get.
Yes. And the wonders of modern technology, we are able to connect across the thousands of miles. Now, Bonnie, your podcast, your blog, which I also find deeply entertaining as well as full of incredible nuggets of wisdom. Could you talk a little bit about what your focus is? What is it that you do, you write about, talk about on your podcast?
Yeah. Who am I?
Yes.
So my primary goal is to support parents in the seeking of joy. I guess if I was to put it into a one sentence byline, that would be what it would be. And that started very early on in my journey with just speaking at, homeschooling moms get-togethers. We would just have our monthly meeting and it seemed like there was a lack of joy, and that wasn't something I was really experiencing. So people started asking questions. Well, how does that work for you then? How do you, and of course you're not joyful every moment of the day, but
Yeah.
I recognize that the way we look at things is going to deeply be affected by our outlook. And so that's how it started. This is, 30 years ago. Then I started a blog about maybe 18 years ago, quite a long time, 17 or 18 years ago. And I don't do as much on it as I should, but it's a lot of silliness and a lot of fun, but a lot of, how to keep your day joyful. And then the podcast just kind of, I just in my wildest dreams never imagined I would be a podcaster because I'm too old, right? And the whole technology thing.
the tech, yes.
Yeah, and it was Cameron Fradd who was interviewing me on her podcast, and she after the podcast she said, you've got to have a podcast. And I said, no, I can't. I wouldn't. I'm who do I talk to? I'm not even talking to a real person. I'm just talking to the air, right? And she goes, no, it's not like that. I'll find you a millennial to help you. And she did, and that was and I realized it's such a great platform for me because I talk a lot, right? And most of my
chatting.
what I do is verbal. When I'm writing, I'm thinking about what I'm saying verbally as I write, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question with the Cameron Fradd podcast, because that was Among the Lilies, wasn't it, when she was doing that? How many times were you on it? Was it once or twice?
Couple of times.
Couple of times, because I must have heard it the second time. Because what had happened, I don't know if I told you the story. So it was during COVID and I was about 40 weeks pregnant and we'd just gone into lockdown here in the UK and we were getting all the, in inverted commas, homeschooling stuff from the schools. And I just went, this is horrendous. This is awful. I can't do this. And I had a bit of a shout at God and I said, Lord, if you want me to do this, this has to be easier because this is rubbish. And I switched on, it was about an hour later, I switched on her podcast and there was this lovely Canadian lady talking about homeschooling and joy. And I went, oh, quite interesting.
You might make it easier.
And then, here we are now. So I'm very grateful to Cameron Fradd and by extension, you who brought me on this homeschooling journey. But the big reason I did ask you on is you are a lady who has had many years' experience, not just of the homeschooling, but you have many children. How many children do you have, Bonnie? 7. Now, most people listening to this might have a couple of small children ages 5 and under or 10 or under and are going, golly, how does that work? I'm sure, very politely phrasing it, how does that work? Because a lot of the mums that listening to this podcast and visiting my blog and are struggling with that kind of evening time, that between 4 and 8 o'clock when they come back from the school run, they come back from work and all of this. And they go, how is it you can be running a home, even at home, with the children? How do you get the joy? How do you keep it together? How? How are you looking so amazing all these years later?
Yeah. I think that uh, it's a complicated um, answer in the sense that the answer, I think, to that question came to me in several layers over several years, right? Because one of the things that I when people started asking me how we do things, like how is it that I'm not butting heads with my kids and that sort of thing, how is it that I keep my energy up, and various other things, questions like that. At first I thought, well, it's because I don't use curriculum. That was my first thought, is because I wasn't an unschooler, but I definitely had um it was very child-led,
Yeah.
right? It was we did a lot of reading together. And we covered all the basics. We did all of that. But I just felt that it needed to be very child-led, interest-led learning. And so I sort of thought that was the why. And then, uh, and then later on, I realized part of the why, a big part of the why, was because of our attitude about discipline, right? And I think this is really the crux of why my podcast took off, because I wasn't expecting that. I just thought I would have a very small audience, and it really took off. And it's because there's not that many voices out there who are saying, you don't really need to punish your kids for this and that and the other. This is normal behavior, and B, punishing them doesn't actually really get you anywhere. So in terms of homeschooling, I knew for sure that I was never going to homeschool with stars and stickers. And not that there's anything, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with stars and stickers to acknowledge, work well done or whatever. But in the sense that I wasn't going to dangle carrots in front of them, like, if you do this, you're going to get this treat, or you're going to get this punishment, or whatever. I just wasn't into that. I just thought, I want education to be for its own sake. And that really, really matters to me. So, uh, what does that look like? And I was successfully homeschooling that way. But there was kind of a back formation to my ideas of discipline. And around that same time, I came across Gordon Neufeld and people who were kind of in the attachment parenting world.
Yeah.
And I realized that my attitude about homeschooling was also affecting my attitude about discipline, because it's all this. You're teaching your kids something. Discipline is teaching your kids something.
Yeah.
So, or many things. Sometimes in like how to personal hygiene, or how to be polite to an adult, or how to interact socially, or whatever. It's the same as teaching math or English or whatever you're teaching. It doesn't matter. It's just a skill or skill set.
Yeah.
That's all. And so I thought, well, if I can homeschool without the bells and whistles, I can absolutely teach my kids the thing they need to know, how to be good humans, without the bells and whistles, right?
Yeah.
And so that became the modus operandi, right? And of course, there were moments when when I was reactive, and moments when I was ineffective as a parent, because
that's very elegantly put, ineffective as a parent. I need to use that, because there are moments when I lose my schmozzle, but I will stick with I was ineffective as a parent. That's very beautiful.
Yeah. And I was just talking to my daughter today. This is a bit of a segue, but we were in the car and we were just talking about sort of relationships and the kind of the life of a parent, which is, a giant guilt trip, right? And as a parent, you go through times when kids, as they get older, have times when they resent parts of their childhood, parts that, things you did, or things that maybe was your family go to, or whatever. They they kind of resent parts of their childhood. And it seems like most of them kind of get past it at some point. That's the experience that I've had. But it feels kind of cruel when you go through it the first couple of times. It feels like it's cruel for your children to criticize when they're, when they become adults, right? Yeah. And I think a lot of it is because you're your hardest critic, right? What I remember the most is my bad moments, right? The moments when I freaked out, the moments when I lost it, the moments when I was nursing a bad mood, the moments when I it went head to head with my kids instead of just thinking, okay, they're just having a moment and I just need to let that go.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about me. It's whatever's going on inside them. That and I think overall that those weren't the moments. Like, I think that's, I was a pretty happy mom most of the time, but that's what I remember,
Yeah.
right? And that's what hurts my heart to think back on my, and that's my spiritual journey. I have to really think
Yeah.
about that and forgive myself and forgive, that God forgives me. And, but it's one of those things that you carry with you so much guilt about, the mistakes you made,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they can
Yeah.
also feel, maybe intractable isn't quite the right word, but you imagine the worst. You imagine the
Mhm.
scarring. I think our minds also automatically go to the horror stories of the trauma and kids who have gone through terrible abusive things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you sort of click into the worst case scenario. But
Mhm.
interestingly enough,
That I've screwed my kids up or
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. I've totally lost my temper. I've done X, Y, Z, and my children will hate me forever, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting. There have been, I think I've heard it on your podcast, but also talking to others, and my own little experience is that's not what the children remember. I mean, I
Yeah.
reflect back on my childhood, and I can't remember my, rage or fury. There were moments, but
Yeah.
I can't remember that. And the days where I have lost the plot, been an ineffective parent, Bonnie. It's funny, but my children at the end of the day, we'll do a sort of a family prayer time and a kind of, I suppose a little bit of a small examen saying, I'm sorry that I've done this to somebody, or I'm sorry for my behavior, or blah, 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 asking for forgiveness. And I'll say what I've done. And the children go, oh, okay. Or even I'll go, oh, I can't, I'm sure I did something today. I can't remember what. And the children are like, oh, we can't remember either. It's really
Uh-huh.
interesting. And you go,
Yeah.
oh, actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
not that it's letting you off the hook. Because we want to try,
Yeah.
we want to try, we want to keep trying and striving for that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
So I think that sort of to your question, how do you do that? How is that done? How is that even possible? And there's people who've obviously done things much harder than me, raised a lot more kids than me, or have
mhm,
closer together, or whatever. That the capacity to say, okay, that was a day and it was bad and I was, an ineffective parent or happened, or the kids were obnoxious or whatever, that I have to let that go and we're starting
yeah.
new, right? We're just starting new. And I think that, excuse me, the capacity to lift ourselves out of that, to be resilient to that.
Mhm.
It happened. It was awful. And now I need to move forward, right? Because we could also find ourselves wallowing in it.
Yeah.
And that's not going to help anybody. I've got a couple of podcast. Are they podcast episodes? They may be on my blog, actually. Maybe I'll send you the link if you want.
Thank you.
Talks or transcripts of talks that I've given on resilience, because I think resilience is, I think some people are born more resilient than others,
Yeah.
right? But resilience is absolutely one of those things that we can grow in ourselves, right? And I think that in the pursuit of holiness, resilience has to be at the top of our list, because we're such a fragile culture, right?
Yeah.
Everything's made snap, anxiety and everything is so rampant, right? And it's real. But how do we build resilience? So instead of thinking, how do we reduce anxiety? How do we reduce these things? How do we build our capacity? I think it maybe is an important thing to look at.
I think so. And I think what I've found very interesting, again, I'm going to come back to the past 5 years. I don't know if you're aware, but here in the UK, from about 2005, 2006, we had a big influx of people from Poland, Hungary, a lot from Eastern Europe who came. They're
Right.
now in their kind of mid-40s, maybe early 50s, and are starting to go back. But it is
Right.
so interesting. Because they lived through communism, they would have been,
Yeah.
let's say, well, maybe 10 when the wall came down in 89, but enough that they knew what struggle was and hard work and actual,
Right.
hard times could be. there is
Yeah.
much more of that resilience, this is the situation, crack on, just crack
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
I look at that. Look, I mean, we were on holiday in Poland earlier this year. I mean, smiles do not come naturally. I will,
Mhm.
there isn't much smiliness, but there is a great kind of strength and solidity there, which I
Uh-huh.
think we could do more of. Certainly in Britain,
Yeah.
I think possibly Canada and a few of the other
And
Anglo
absolutely.
sphere could do with a little bit more of that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
resilience. So yes, if you could please pop down,
Sure.
send those to me and I'll put them in the show notes and we'll have that.
Sure. And yeah, but it's an interesting thing, how and so I guess that was something that and sometimes I wondered, is that shallowness to
Mhm.
just say, okay, you know what, I just have to move on, right? I just have to move on. Or, that I'm not spending a lot of time thinking about it. And I mean I was in my interior life, I was, uh but I just can't spend time wallowing in it. So when you have a bad day, I think that that's a really big part of it. I also think, I really think this is something that took me a few kids, and maybe probably my fourth kid, that I figured this out, that I really needed some planned time for myself.
Yes.
And I didn't need a lot.
Yeah.
For me, that was about once a week for 2 or 3 hours. And if I had a little baby, I would take them with me. But once they got to be sort of toddlers, then I would go, I'd leave the toddler at home because they were generally happier at home than just out trotting around with me.
Yeah.
Uh, and, so it was, so sometimes I would have a baby with me, but I did that for years, even as my kids got older and they were more self-sufficient and, they would spend lots of time doing their own things and that sort of thing. It was just like getting away from the house and kind of gaining some perspective on, sorry, cough, cough, cough. I have, uh, who I am as a woman, who I
Yeah.
am as a child of God, who I am as a mom, and go back appreciating them more, right? So, and I know for some women, like to get out, to get out to the gym or to go out for a long
Mm.
walk, so for me, Saturday mornings and a couple of times a week, I just wanted a hot bath all by myself
Yeah.
with the door locked.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's something that we need to be talking to our spouses about, right? That,
Yeah.
I need this and this will help me and this will help me be in a better frame. Because sometimes on Thursday, I'd be thinking, okay, Saturday is just 2 days away,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know? But it really, really mattered.
Yeah, it's so important. And I mean, interestingly enough, I kind of instigated that with baby number one. I would call it on a Saturday morning my running away time. And there was a bakery
Yeah.
near us in London. They open at 7 in the morning. And I'd be like there at the door at 7. And I would sit and I would write for a couple of hours and just get into that flow of where I had been before I had my first one. And all of a sudden I was experiencing the staccato nature of life when babies and little ones come in. And I was struggling. I was really struggling with that transition. But those couple of hours was enough, as you say, it just fills your bottle, it grounds you, and you go, okay,
Yeah.
you can go back into it and you have the capacity to carry more, to become
And
that
sometimes,
keystone.
sorry, there was a lag there.
Yeah.
It also helps you, I think, sometimes identify things that you can then talk to your spouse about and
Yeah.
say, okay, while I was out, I was just thinking about why, this particular kid is, giving me grief right now, or why it feels like, I don't really feel close to you right now. And, it kind of just gives you pause to think about, okay, why am I feeling angst about a particular thing right now? And what can I do about that?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm. So that sort of space of reflection is, important.
Mm,
Important just to have
yeah.
that. Now, one of the things as well, again, a lot of the mums struggle with, um, is it's kind of because life is busy with the activities, with the school run or the work, all of these. I mean, even just listing it, I'm already going, oh, that's a lot. So many people's homes that manifests as the clutter, that manifests as the kind of the mess and all of these
Yeah.
things, which then, so you're kind of, your brain is already overwhelmed. You're sort of overstimulated and overwhelmed at work or on the school run or the activities. And you come home and there's even more, like, it's like your brain has vomited out everywhere. Um, what? And again, a lot of my listeners will be going, Bonnie, I'm so glad I'm getting this wisdom, these shortcuts. Took you 4 children to learn these. I'm glad I'm going to learn this at child number 1 or 2. But how do you kind of keep the house orderly? How do you, or do you not? Is it an absolute bomb site and it doesn't matter? I mean, what do you
No,
do?
it was.
Yeah.
Years ago, I was raised with pack rats, so
Yeah.
this was my formation was very much in the pack rat mentality. Don't ever throw away anything. Just keep accumulating things.
Just in case.
And my parents weren't. Sorry.
Just in case. For the
Just in case. My parents weren't materialistic people, but you just didn't get rid of anything, right? And so I found that a bit claustrophobic, but I also didn't know how to operate any other way. And so I started sort of looking for resources when I think probably when I had my 3rd daughter. I thought, okay, I can't go down that clutter road again. And, you know, as you have kids, you accumulate more stuff, right?
Yeah.
I can't go down that clutter road again because it's making me crazy. So for, I would say 3 or 4 years, I was looking for resources that would help me live a life that was simpler. Now, there's a lot more resources out there now because simplicity and sort of minimalism and all of those things are you know, in a sense, fashionable right now, right? And I think it's a great move. I think it's a great move because we come from a couple of generations of just so stuff oriented, right? Yeah. And so, but there wasn't much out there at the time, and of course, internet was not a thing. So I would get out books from the library, kind of on housekeeping, house cleaning. And I found a few there was a couple of good pieces of advice in there, but they weren't really cutting to the chase, right? And then I came across the book Sink Reflections, which is, if you're familiar with it, Marla Silly is the author, and her whole thing is how to declutter your life like in 15-minute increments a day, right? And how to keep it that way. So instead of like trying to just do a massive clean, it's just, you know what? You just have to start with one thing and just plug away.
Yeah.
Plug away.
Which is
plug away.
Which is in contrast to Marie Kondo, because
yes, exactly.
I remember reading her book, and I only had 1 child maybe at this point, and the whole kind of emptying everything.
Yeah.
And I remember just reading that and go, that sounds amazing. Wow.
But not this season.
We have a cupboard which is I call it kind of the cupboard of doom, where it's got like shopping bags and general kind of clutter, and it's sat in there. Yeah. And I'd open the cupboard and I'd go, I really have to do something. Marie would not approve of her book being in the cupboard of clutter. And I'd close the door again. And so that was quite, I mean, beautiful book. And you felt sort of inspired thinking about it, but definitely not for when you've got a child, 2 children or more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like the whole method, now I used an edited abbreviated method of the Marla Silly thing, you know, and even now I still do it to this day, right? It's just a way of sort of, because clutter will build up, even though there's just 2 of us at home. We're empty nesters as of, you know, August. And we, but you know, clutter still builds up, right? If you're not sort of constantly aware of how it's building up and constantly getting rid of the things you need. So, you know, I still do that, but I really appreciated her methods. But then not that long ago, maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that, I decided I would read the Marie Kondo book because it's something I talk about and, you know, on podcasts and blog and with people. And I thought I should read it because I can see, like, one of my daughters who did not have children at the time, she was single, she did it. It was amazing to see how it transformed her life, right? I thought, okay, I think it'd be good to read it. And so I sort of followed her. You know, I'm somebody who I feel like has lived a pretty simple, decluttered life for many years, right? As simple as 7 kids allows you to, you know, because there's sports equipment and there's music and there's, you know, there's lots of stuff.
So many welly boots. We're wintertime here, and I just go, how many? That's like a caterpillar of different shoe sizes. You know, one of those kind of primordial centipedes has taken over, and there's just wellies everywhere. It's bonkers. It's just bonkers, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes. Yeah. So yes, you accumulate quite a lot.
You do, and so, but I went through her stuff, her method, And I got rid of a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I was kind of amazed. So, for example, like the dress that's been sitting in your closet that, doesn't feel quite right when you put it on, but you hang on to it because you really love it, but you never wear it because it doesn't feel right when you put it on. So every time you put it on, maybe twice a year or something, you think, oh yeah, that's why I don't wear this, right? Where she's actually saying, no, like take all those things and get rid of them because they'll never feel right. You'll never get that stain out. You'll never fit into that again or whatever. That don't keep that, or the things that people gave you, right?
Yeah.
Sort of sentimental things.
Oh.
And I feel like I live a pretty decluttered life. And this took me kind of to a new level. So I think that in certain times of your life, it would be a very appropriate thing to do. Or if you said, you know what, like say you're homeschooling or your kids are in school or whatever, I'm going to take the next 6 months and that's all I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a massive change in my life. But I would still say then read Sync Reflections because she's going to keep you there.
Yeah.
Right. Just getting rid of stuff isn't enough.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Learning how to manage.
Yes, and discern what comes in and out. But I think that's an important thing, your observation about what stage of life, what season of life you're in. Because 8 years ago, your youngest would have been, what, 10, 11 years old?
11. Yeah.
So you're at a point as well. You can have kind of conversations about what we're keeping and what we're not.
Yeah.
Because when you've got the younger ones, that can be hard. That can be hard. No, this is my favorite piece of paper. This is my favorite glossy. Goodness knows
This was in
what.
the recycling.
This was in the recycling. How? How could you? And
I must.
yeah, and it's about coming back to sort of the running away time and feeling your energy bottles and trying your best to be an effective parent. I find those conversations are quite draining, and I become more of an ineffective parent. So yes, but I think the Marie Kondo. Look, I was very much drawn to it, but I also looked at my life and went, not yet.
Yeah, not really an option
Not
now.
yet.
Yeah.
But the increments, the 15 minutes, and I think that's actually just quite a powerful thought, really. The times in which we live are very much about kind of go big or go home. It's like goals, goals, goals. You succeed, you focus on a goal, and if you don't succeed, you've fluffed it.
Right.
Whereas the reality of motherhood life, the home, when I say it's a marathon, I don't mean that. There are moments that are hard, but as you say, it's these kind of gentle increments. It's a much softer, gentler transformation. And coming back to the 15 minutes a day, doing that, getting into that habit, you can actually see huge transformation just reflecting on within a week, within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks. And you can actually have that progression, which I think gives people much more confidence because they go, I can do 15 minutes. That I can do. That is or 10 minutes, you put the ticker on. That is something that is I can do in my life. These are little changes that over time but compound.
And the confidence is a huge component of this, right? The confidence is we think, okay, this bathroom is decluttered, right? And that only took me, 5 15-minute episodes of, doing one drawer at a time or whatever. And then you think, okay, this is doable, right?
Yeah. And important, especially I think for the mums as well, the room or the space that you're in the most, which is often the kitchen. I think that's a really important space to have that discipline, that kind of focus where you are making sure the space that you are in is reflecting how you want your brain to be, because we have that, don't we? I mean, I'm thinking about kind of ecclesiastical architecture, of course, which I'm sure is where most people's minds will go. But if you think about going into some of these, some of the medieval convents and friaries, the spaces where the monks and the nuns were, or the friars were often very simple, very calm, very clear, because it meant that obviously their focus could be on God, but there was a beauty in that as well, in order to get them into the right frame of mind to have that relationship. And I think we need to sort of reflect on that as well for our homes.
Absolutely.
What is it we're aiming?
Yeah, there's there's an interesting thought, because one of the things, like as parents, we know that we deal with crises on a pretty regular
Yeah.
basis. Like if one kid gets sick, they all get sick, and you think, well, how could I possibly keep on top of something if, because it just goes to pot
Yeah.
when we have a bad day, somebody gets sick or somebody hurts themselves or I get pregnant and I'm, have morning sickness or whatever. There's so many multitudinous things that we could happen that makes our day go sideways. And when you have only little kids, your day goes sideways like every single day, right?
Mm.
But if you don't own a lot of stuff that you don't use, getting it back together isn't nearly as big of a burden.
Yeah.
Right. So for example, if you own one can opener, right, and you own 2 whisks instead of 8 and 2 frying pans instead of 14,
Yeah.
because we can get kind of crazy, right? And so if you, first of all, you can't get that backed up on dishes that need doing or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's just so you open a drawer and you can actually see what's in it,
Yeah.
right? You can see what's in it. Okay, there's the can opener, there's the whisk, there's the spatula.
Dinner's burning, the washing's multiplying, and someone's crying. It could even be you. If your evenings feel like survival mode, the Command the Chaos Mum Life Management Planner is your first gentle step back to calm. It's a printable 80-page guide and planner to help you reset your routines and breathe again without needing to become someone else entirely. Start your reset today. The link's in the show notes.
And I mean, there's some things it's worth having a couple of, but there's not that many things worth having 14 of.
No,
right?
indeed.
Almost
Indeed.
anything.
Yeah. Aside from maybe socks and pants, but that aside.
Yes.
Oh dear. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
true. It's just that kind of paring down. What do we need? What do we
Yeah.
use? And
Yeah.
that's a really important thing. I mean, I what was it, about a month ago, I finally sold my what do they call it? The KitchenAid. Those very nice looking retro
Right.
baking
Yes.
things. Those. You can get them in all the colours.
Yes.
Go faster red, latte, electric blue, whatever you like.
Yeah.
Mine was about 13 years old, and I loved it. But I would look at it and go, I'm not baking at the moment. So I would put it in the cupboard. And then whenever
Yeah.
I would do baking, it would come out the cupboard in this big palaver. And it reached a point I
Yeah.
just thought, no, enough. I'm just getting a little hand whisk. Yeah. Because as beautiful as this thing is, there
Yeah.
is there's also, guilt was too strong a word. Was it even guilt? No, it was like it was the shoulds. I should be baking
Yes.
more. I should be making bread. I should be using that and justifying the cost of it. So,
Counter space.
yeah,
They take up a fair bit of real estate, right?
they do. And the dusting, the wiping. So yeah, it's all these things you need to factor in. I don't believe in, I call them tchotchkes. So anything that goes on a shelf that would involve dusting, I
Right.
don't need that. I do not need that. That is I think what's also happened, I was just thinking about your observation, we're going into a generational shift where people are having less clearer homes. There's less stuff in there. And I was suddenly thinking about how the Victorians had excess. It was all kind of frills and flounces and all sorts of things, and lots of clutter and dark colours and very heavy. And then I went, but they had staff. They had staff who
I know.
could dust and clear and do all the twiddly bits.
Yes.
But we don't.
I was just speaking at a conference in Colorado,
Yeah.
in Denver, and this summer, and I brought up that exact point. The
Mhm.
problem isn't that my house is so big. The problem is I don't have staff. What
Oh.
staff would be nice?
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
That would be lovely. Then there'd be more twiddly furniture to keep them busy. But the reality is most people don't. We want a sort of Swedish or Japanese style, one wipe, job done, as you're
Yeah.
walking past.
Yeah.
That's what I think most women today will find themselves in that situation.
Yeah.
In order to keep the house in order and your own sanity
Yeah.
intact, it really needs to be as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. As lovely as the shabby chic is, but sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. One of the early on, one of the books that I read about housekeeping, which was not altogether helpful, was had a couple of good suggestions. I can't even remember the name of the book now because I dismissed most of it. But basically, he was saying,
He.
kind of what you need to do. It was a man, yeah, who was a professional cleaner.
Oh, okay.
Is
Right.
everything needs right? Everything needs to be built in, right? So you have a built-in couch that you put cushions on, so that things can't go under it, and you have a everything is built in. You have a nook with a built-in bench, and then your life will get so much easier. But we also, where's the balance between that and cozy, right? Like everything's square and built in, not really cozy either.
And there
And
are,
do we care about dust bunnies? Like I don't.
no, I think
Yeah.
there's also the difference as well between, as a professional cleaner, you are going to be uninterrupted. As a mum, you might get one or two interruptions. So I think there's a different kind of methodology involved.
Massive.
I think it's useful, the professional cleaners, the tips and tricks how to use the bicarb or the lemon or whatever it is they use. And that's interesting. But in terms of the systems, I'm not sure that that's necessarily so helpful. I had a conversation with a teacher, and they said, this was with homeschooling, and they said, why aren't you talking to teachers? Why aren't you getting more advice from teachers? Why do you think you can do this on your own? And I said, I was genuinely surprised. And I said, but I don't need a teacher because I am not teaching 30 children in a classroom.
Yes.
If I was doing that, I would come and ask teachers. What I need are women who have survived a couple of decades of homeschooling with loads of children, put the food on the table, kept the house clean, kept the marriage intact, done all the things. That's what I need. And their children are educated by the end. That's the guide. That's the guide I need. So yeah, it's interesting. At first glance, you go, so cleaning, he's a cleaner. I want to clean my house. He's a teacher. I am teaching my children. But actually, it's quite different methods that are necessary for our lives, and this comes back again to motherhood. That sort of that gradual growth. It's very organic, holistic, shall we say, Bonnie? Yeah.
We were in Italy recently, and I met a British couple. They were about our age. We met a British couple while we were there, and we got chatting with them, and somehow homeschooling came up in the air, and she said she thought it was very interesting. She had one of her daughters was a teacher or something, and so she was kind of making the comparison what that would be like to homeschool. And she said, so when you're homeschooling, who takes the small children while you're teaching the children?
Well,
I said, oh, well, that would be me. That would be me juggling all of that. And I wondered if her next question would be, who comes in and cleans your space every day?
Oh
Makes your meals?
that would be me. That would be me again. That would be me. So, but it's looking at a problem. You just have to think differently, and it's also, I don't think, let's put it another way. People talk about freedom. They say, I want freedom. I want to do what I want. I want freedom. I don't want rules. Sorry, I'm being a little bit dismissive with my tone. Don't want rules, want to be free. But actually, when you have boundaries and when you have rules to a degree, and I'm not talking authoritarian, you're being absolutely crushed. That's not good. But there are boundaries and limits. The creativity that comes within that space is incredible. So coming back to the fact, right, I'm educating my children, but there are small babies or toddlers or whatever it is around. Or I have to work and I also need to be feeding the children. These are the limits. I'm going to somehow have to get creative within that. And that is not only a beautiful thing, but it gives you so much confidence because you go, oh, wow, I thought of that. I've created that. I have solved that problem. And it just lifts you. It just lifts you. Yes, you can go and listen to podcasts, go and read the books in order to get the solution that fits with your family. But it comes back to that giving women confidence again, giving mothers confidence again, that they can do things for them and their families. And it's amazing how that can come from restrictions, boundaries, and limits.
And in that idea of restrictions and boundaries, it also takes us back to the very beginning of our conversation because, okay, how do you do it? One of the things that I discovered was I had to have 3 days a week at home where I didn't go out in the car. And that made all the difference. When I defined that for myself, it was like, okay, now that's how I can keep on top of educating my children and making sure that the house is reasonably tidy and all of that, that I don't have to say yes to everything, and I don't have to do everything that's out there. I can pick and choose. And so we kind of are victims to our activities and engagements and the things that we have to do. Here's just an example. Say you were going to make something for dinner and you don't have the ingredients for that particular thing. So you could run out to the store, or you could just say, you know what? We're going to have French toast tonight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can just decide something else. There will always be something edible in your cupboards,
Yes.
right? It might not be beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. No, funny you should mention that, Bonnie. I have the Pantry Reset Challenge where you can
let's hear about that.
stock up your pantry with vital things so that when you reach that point, you always will have something to cook. And there's kind of 3 ideas per ingredient, so you can always whip something up. I shall put the link in the show notes. That's one
You
of them.
absolutely should.
Amazing segue. Thank you, Bonnie. So, but yeah, no, it's being easier on yourself. I mean, we sometimes have those days when, again, I'm an ineffective parent and all goes wrong, and we've been out and too busy and done too much, and everybody is just overwhelmed. And I go, enough, having cereal for dinner, and then everybody's going to bed. Cereal. Yeah.
I remember phoning Albert and saying, it's been one of those days. Are you okay with oatmeal for dinner? And he was like, yes, I am.
Yes,
Thank God.
yes,
My husband who's okay with oatmeal for dinner.
Do you know? And he answered well. He said, he realized, he's like, yes, Bonnie.
Yes.
That sounds amazing.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. No, very true.
And I mean, there's still days when we, we're busy or we don't feel like cooking or whatever. I'll say, this grilled cheese, okay, or whatever. Yeah, of course. And that's a blessing. That's a real blessing to have a husband who's understanding enough to know that sometimes you just don't have it.
Yeah, just not there. It's very true. Oh, fantastic. Bonnie, if you could give one tip to the mums who are listening to this, who are feeling frazzled, house is a tip, they've got that guilt that, oh, I failed again. What is one tip you could give to them today that would make a huge difference for the next few days for them?
That's a great question. So I think that the thing that comes to my mind first is just taking a look at your life and, having a moment of gratitude for what is going right.
Yeah.
Oh, and sometimes you have to dig deep. I understand that, right? I've had days where I thought, not really much I can think of here. And the fact that you have children, that your husband has a job, that you have a roof over your head, that you have a family who loves you, whatever it is in your life, or your good health, that if you can just take a moment to think about what is working in our house right now, what is going well, that can really turn everything. That can really turn everything around, to just be grateful for what is, even if it feels like scraps at that moment, or that maybe you theoretically are grateful for it, but you're having a hard time sort of digging up the actual gratitude that goes with the theory, right? But if you can just start with the theory and allow yourself to just ruminate on that, I think the practice of gratitude is one of the things that can be the quickest way we turn ourselves around. Yeah.
Huge. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. Where can people find you? If they go, oh, Bonnie, I like the cut of your jib, woman. Where do I find more?
So probably where I am the most is my podcast, which is Make Joy Normal. And that is on all your regular podcast carriers. And then I have a blog called, it's just bonnielandry.ca. My blog is actually called Practicing Mammal, but on my website, bonnielandry.ca. And I'm on Instagram. Don't know how long that's going to last for. So I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram, but I've given up any other social media that I had there. And if you want to email me, my email is makejoynormal@gmail.com.
Brilliant. All right. Bless you, Bonnie. This has been a delight. Thank you.
Yes. You too. Thank you so much.
God bless.
For having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Love the podcast and want to help keep the kettle on? You can support the show. Think of it like buying me a cup of tea or helping cover the cost of the biscuits. You'll find the link in the show notes. Thank you for keeping this kitchen conversation going.